I used to believe that discipline was a battle. Wake up at 5, run 5 miles, attack the hardest task before breakfast. Every morning I'd armor myself with routines, alarms screaming, calendars packed, lists that never seemed to end. And for a while, I thought that was strength. You know, that feeling of control, of order, of pushing yourself harder than yesterday. But somewhere along the line, I began to notice what that kind of discipline was really costing me. My mind was always racing, my heart always behind. Even when I finished a long day, there was this quiet voice inside whispering, "You should have done more." One evening, I came home after hours of talking, writing, answering letters, my head buzzing like a hive. The apartment was still. The air smelled faintly of paper and coffee. I dropped my bag, loosened my tie, and looked at the mess on my desk. Papers, pens, half-empty cups. And then my eyes stopped on something small, a green mug. Nothing special, chipped on one side, the handle a little worn. I used to drink my morning coffee from it, but that night, for some reason, I filled it with water. And I told myself, softly, when I see this mug, I drink. No schedule, no app, no reminder buzzing in my pocket, just that small green mug sitting there like a quiet promise. It was such a simple act, almost silly. But in that quiet moment, I felt something shift inside me, as if life had handed me a gentler way to begin again. The next morning, without even thinking, I reached for it. A sip of water, a breath. No guilt, no struggle. Just a cue and a quiet commitment. That little green mug became my teacher. It showed me something I had missed for years. Most of the good things in life don't need to be forced. They just need to be invited. Because sometimes peace doesn't come from control. It comes from small signals that remind us who we already are. We live in a world that never stops calling our name. Phones buzz, screens flash, apps compete for our attention, like restless children tugging at our sleeves. Every moment, something is trying to remind us of a meeting, a message, a task, a goal. And yet, somehow, in all that noise, we forget the simplest things. To drink, to breathe, to stretch, to smile. It's almost funny. The more tools we build to manage our lives, the less we actually live them. I began to notice how much of my discipline was just noise in disguise. Every beep, every alert, every checklist. It didn't bring me peace. It only filled the space where stillness was meant to be. So one morning, I tried something different. I decided to stop shouting at myself and start whispering instead. What if I replaced all the alarms, all the mental nagging with something quieter? What if discipline could feel gentle, like a friendly nudge instead of a marching order? That's when I began my little experiment. I started to fill my world with cues, not commands, not deadlines, just visual invitations. Objects that whispered, "Hey, remember what matters." The green mug was the first one. Then came a small orange sticky note on my laptop. It said only 2 words, "Answer briefly." Each time I saw that orange square, I smiled. It reminded me that brevity is kindness. People don't always need our paragraphs. Sometimes they just need our presence. A clear thought, a warm tone, a touch of respect for their time. That little orange note taught me to pause before I spoke, to breathe before I wrote. It wasn't a rule, it was an invitation to be kinder. You see, when reminders come from outside pressure, they make us resist. But when they come as quiet cues, they make us respond. And that difference, that softness, changes everything. Then came the book on my pillow. It started as an accident, a book I'd forgotten to put away one morning. That night, when I walked into my room, there it was, resting right where my head would be. And I thought, maybe that's a sign. So I made myself a promise. If the book is on the pillow, read one page before sleep. Just one page, not a rule, not a challenge, just a cue. A soft signal that said, end your day with something that feeds you. Some nights I read 20 pages. Other nights I barely made it through half of one before my eyes closed. But it didn't matter, because reading was no longer a task. It became a ritual, a gentle landing for the mind. You know that feeling when you turn off the lamp, close the book, and the world feels quiet again? That became my favorite part of the day. And slowly, something dawned on me. Something almost childlike in its simplicity. The environment we build shapes the person we become. I had spent years trying to change myself from the inside out, through willpower, through effort, through endless motivation. But that little book on my pillow showed me another path. Sometimes, the easiest way to change yourself is to change what you see every day. Every object around you is already speaking. The only question is, what is it saying? So I began to listen more closely. The green mug whispered, care for your body. The orange note said, be brief, be kind. And the book on my pillow whispered, keep growing. Those small voices began to guide me better than any schedule or speech ever could. They were not demanding, they were reminding. And the more I listened, the lighter life began to feel. People often tell me, I want to be more disciplined. And every time I smile. Because discipline, at least the way most people imagine it, sounds so heavy, doesn't it? Like a word made of stone. But the truth is, real discipline isn't loud. It's not a battle cry. It's a whisper. A few colors, a few objects, a few quiet cues that speak softly to your better self. You don't have to fight your nature. You just have to guide it, gently, patiently, with a touch of kindness. When I began to live this way, something beautiful happened. My life felt lighter. No more inner lectures, no more guilt over forgotten goals, just small signals, little promises scattered through my day. One afternoon, a friend stopped by my office. He looked around and laughed. You've got mugs, notes, and books everywhere. This looks like a museum of tiny habits. I laughed too. Maybe it is, I told him. But each one of these things is a conversation between me and my better self. He noticed a folded towel on a chair. What's that one for? He asked. Oh, that? I said, smiling. That's my reminder to stretch. When I see that towel, I don't think exercise. I just stand up, raise my arms, take a deep breath, and remember that I'm alive. He looked at me and said, I wish I could be that organized. I shook my head. You don't need to be organized, I told him. You just need a few gentle signals that pull you back to who you want to be. That's the secret I discovered. You can replace discipline with design. Instead of forcing yourself to remember, let your surroundings remember for you. I began to see this idea come alive in other people's lives too. Everywhere I looked, quiet signals were helping people stay true to themselves, without pressure, without struggle. There was a teacher I once met who kept a small seashell on her desk. When her students grew restless and her patience began to thin, she'd place her hand on that shell. She told me, "It reminds me of the ocean, of calm waves and slow tides." In that tiny moment, she would breathe, soften her voice, and find her peace again. Then there was a father, a busy man who spent half his life in traffic. He kept a drawing taped to the dashboard made by his little daughter. When cars honked and frustration built up, he'd glance at that picture, a child's smile in crayon, and suddenly his anger melted into gratitude. He'd breathe, grip the wheel a little lighter, and remember who he was driving home to. And I knew a young entrepreneur, full of energy and ambition, who left her running shoes by the door, not to shame herself into jogging, but to invite herself. Every time she saw them, they whispered, "You'll feel better once you move." Sometimes she ran, sometimes she didn't. But either way, those shoes reminded her that self-care was always waiting, no guilt attached. Cues, not commands. Invitations, not obligations. And over time, those little signals began to weave a quiet rhythm of trust, a kind of friendship between the person you are and the person you're becoming. Each cue became a promise, "I'll be here when you need me," and each small commitment, a moment of grace. That's how the noise of life starts to fade, not through force, but through gentle design. One of the hardest lessons I've learned is this: willpower fades, motivation burns out, but identity, that stays. If you tie your habits to what you do, they'll come and go like the weather. But if you tie them to who you are, they'll begin to grow roots. That's when the cues start working on their own. You stop pushing yourself and start recognizing yourself. When I see my green mug, I'm not thinking, "I should drink more water." I'm thinking, "I'm someone who takes care of himself." When I glance at that orange sticky note, I'm not thinking, "I must reply fast." I'm thinking, "I'm someone who values clarity and kindness." And when I lay my head beside that book on the pillow, I'm not thinking, "I must read tonight." I'm thinking, "I'm someone who keeps learning." That small shift from what to who, it changes everything. Because your actions start flowing naturally from your sense of self. You're not forcing discipline anymore. You're living in alignment. There's a quiet beauty in creating a life that guides you instead of pushing you. When you stop trying to control every moment, you begin to cooperate with your own nature. And what once felt like discipline starts to feel like ease. You don't need to build a stricter routine. You just need to build a kinder environment, one that reminds you of who you already are when you're at your best. That's where peace begins. Now, if you want to begin this gentle art for yourself, here's how I started. It's not a system, not a program, just 3 quiet steps that help you design a life that supports you instead of scolding you. Step 1. Choose 5 signals. Think of them as little companions, one for each part of your life. One for your health, one for your relationships, one for your learning, one for your work, and one for your spirit. They don't have to be perfect. They don't even have to make sense to anyone else. Maybe it's a green mug for water, a candle for evening calm, a sticky note on your computer for kindness in communication, a photo of a place you love to remind you why you work so hard, or maybe just a smooth stone in your pocket to remind you to stay grounded. Each one of these cues will become a quiet friend, a whisper in your daily rhythm. You'll start to see them not as objects, but as gentle promises, symbols of what matters most. Step 2. Link each cue to a simple action. Keep it light, keep it kind. When I see the mug, I drink. When I see the note, I reply. When I see the book, I read. When I see the towel, I stretch. When I see the photo, I breathe. That's all. Each cue should feel like a friend tapping you on the shoulder, not a drill sergeant shouting orders. The key is effortlessness, something you can do in less than a minute, because action builds trust, and trust, my friend, builds consistency. Step 3. Review your signals once a week. Every Sunday morning, I sit with my coffee and look around my home. Which cues are still alive? Which have faded into the background? Sometimes the orange sticky note loses its power, so I change it. Maybe a new color, maybe a new word. Sometimes the green mug gets chipped. I replace it. This system is alive. It breathes with you. It grows as you grow. And because these cues are so simple, they never feel heavy. They never weigh you down. That's the beauty of it. It's not a rule book, it's a relationship. A weekly check-in, not for judgment, but for renewal. A quiet moment to ask yourself, are my surroundings still reminding me of the life I want?
I've found that these small signals can do what no alarm clock or checklist ever could. They create harmony between intention and action. They speak directly to that quiet part of us, the subconscious, that doesn't respond to pressure but listens to meaning, to color, to touch, to light. Our ancestors understood this long before we did. They lit candles at dusk. They rang bells to mark the hours. They burned incense to remind themselves of presence, of prayer, of gratitude. Those rituals weren't about control. They were about remembering. They anchored the soul to the moment. Today, we've traded those sacred cues for notifications and schedules. Our reminders live in pixels instead of places. But deep down, our minds still crave something we can touch, something real. That's what cues are. They're modern rituals hiding in plain sight. A mug, a note, a book, a towel, a candle. Each one quietly saying, "Come back. Be here." There was a time when I thought success meant big goals, milestones, achievements, recognition. But now I see it differently. True success feels more like alignment, a gentle choreography between who you are and what surrounds you. When those two move together, life doesn't necessarily get easier, but it becomes more peaceful. You stop chasing balance and start feeling it. Because the truth is, none of us needs more motivation. We just need fewer distractions. And these small cues, when chosen with care, quietly clear the noise. They don't shout, they don't demand, they simply remind you of what matters. They turn your everyday spaces into places of meaning. Your desk, your kitchen, your pillow. Each one holding a whisper of your best intentions. A few months ago, I visited an old friend, a sculptor who lives by the sea. His studio was filled with light and silence, the kind that hums softly between the waves and the wind. Every surface was dusted with fine white powder, the scent of stone and salt mingling in the air. I watched him work, slow, patient movements, like time itself had learned to breathe. And near his tools, I noticed a small glass of water. I pointed to it and smiled. "That's your cue, isn't it?" He laughed quietly. "Yes," he said. "That's my reminder to pause." Every time he finishes shaping one part of a sculpture, he drinks, looks out the window at the ocean, and breathes before starting the next. "That glass," he told me, "has probably saved me from breaking 100 pieces." I laughed because I knew exactly what he meant. A cue doesn't just remind us what to do, it reminds us to be, to stop before we rush, to breathe before we react, to return to the quiet rhythm underneath all the noise. As the days go by, you'll start to notice something beautiful. These signals scattered around your life begin to talk to each other. The mug reminds you to drink, and suddenly you feel clearer. The clarity helps you speak with kindness. That kindness softens your evenings. You sleep better. And that good sleep gives you strength to greet the morning with calm. No plan could have built that kind of harmony. But a few humble cues, they did. Because life doesn't change through grand declarations. It changes through quiet consistency. Through a handful of small, steady invitations that whisper, "Come back to yourself." There are days when everything feels like noise. When your phone won't stop ringing, your inbox fills faster than you can breathe, and your thoughts scatter like leaves in the wind. On those days, don't fight the storm. Just look for one small cue. A candle, a plant, a photograph, something that grounds you, something real. Let that single object become your lighthouse until the storm passes. Because that's what this practice is truly about. It's not about perfection. It's about coming home to yourself, one signal at a time. I've come to believe that life always whispers before it shouts. And if you learn to hear those whispers, the sound of a turning page, the sight of morning light in your mug, the feel of a towel in your hands, you'll begin to realize something powerful. These cues aren't about habit. They're about awareness, about remembering to live before the day runs away. Sometimes people ask me, "But isn't that too simple?" And I smile and say, "Yes, that's why it works." The simplest things last because they meet us right where we are. A cue doesn't demand a new version of you. It reminds you that the good one has been here all along. So if I could offer you one quiet challenge tonight, it would be this. Before you go to bed, choose one small object, something that already lives in your home. It could be a cup, a note, a stone, a pen. Give it meaning. Let it remind you of one gentle action that matters to you. Then, watch how your life slowly leans toward that meaning, one cue at a time. And when the week ends, sit back for a moment. Look around. Ask yourself, which signals helped me live more peacefully? Keep those. Let the rest go. The older I get, the more I see that peace isn't something you earn at the end of striving. It's something you design, moment by moment, with colors, with objects, with love. Every signal you choose is a conversation with your future self. And every small commitment you honor becomes a thread of trust between who you are and who you're becoming. So don't wait for the grand transformation. Start with one green mug, one orange note, one book on a pillow. Let your life fill with small, steady invitations, the quiet promises that remind you how good it feels to keep them. Because in the end, it's not the loud declarations that build a beautiful life. It's the gentle, consistent whispers of your own making. Tomorrow may never come, but today is here, soft, alive, and waiting for you to live it.